Chapter 38, Crazy Ways. I began to visit different Latin Kings' section throughout the city, in the suburbs with older King brothers. The section I enjoyed the most was Chinatown. It was a totally new experience for me, a different culture, a different way of life, and still Latin King territory. The Kings of Chinatown, with many Chinese members, had heard of my fame as a gang member. They welcomed me and extended an invitation to return and party with them. I loved Oriental food, their mannerisms, and their women. Unlike the women that hung around with the Puerto Rican Latin Kings, the Oriental women weren't as quick to offer themselves. There was mystery. The ones that did were always spoken for when I came around. I had such a desire to experience sex with the Oriental woman that I began looking for ways to get to Chinatown. Then I met Cindy. Cindy was the sister of a Latin king, Chinita, I called her. She was gorgeous, with a shy smile. Chinita was different from any other woman I had ever met. She knew right from the start that my intentions in befriending her were sexual. Unlike others, Cindy didn't threaten me into respecting her. She didn't even mention it. Instead, Cindy earned my respect by demonstrating the respect she had for herself to others and to me. Any inappropriate action, such as an attempt to touch her, would cause Cindy to walk off. Chinita became a very good friend of mine. I loved talking to her, but it was Cindy that got me interested in school again. I decided to try to enroll again the following year. She promised to help me earn respectable grades. All you have to do, she said, is have the desire. As winter grew colder, my visits to Chinatown became fewer. Finally, Cindy and I became phone friends. Just before winter ended, the gang wars flared up again. Innocent people were being killed because of the colors they wore or where they were standing. Anything that could be mistaken as gang affiliation could get a person killed. 2 students standing at a bus stop on their way to school were shot to death because they were standing next to a gang insignia drawn on a wall. One of the students just so happened to be wearing the same colors that belonged to the gang that was represented on the wall. The students had no gang affiliation. A Latin king from the Beach and Spalding Street section was also killed. Plans for revenge were discussed at weekly meetings. I didn't want to join anybody else's planned hit. I felt safer and more confident doing my own thing. Most of the time, I was asked to be the trigger man anyway. Granted, it was mostly because of my big mouth, but still, I was the one initiating the action, so what difference did it make? While the other kings of Cadezi and Armitage were talking and waiting for warmer weather, I thought a wintertime hit would be more appropriate. The last snow of the year was falling. It was a blizzard. It snowed so hard and so heavily that you could barely see 5 feet in front of you. Everything was hidden by the snow. To me, it was perfect weather to make a hit. I had an Eskimo-style coat that winter. The hood on it neatly covered my whole face. I walked up Humboldt Boulevard through the park and down Division Avenue toward Western Avenue. There was nobody around. I carried a can of spray paint, a bottle of wine, and my .357 Magnum. As I approached Maplewood Street in Division, I saw about 4 people standing on the corner. As I got closer, I could see that there were 5 guys, and they were Cobras. I clenched the gun inside my pocket, put my head down, and walked hurriedly like somebody wanting to get out of the cold. As I was crossing Maplewood toward the guys, I tried to pull the gun out, but it got stuck in my pocket. Bolsas, bags, one of them called out as I walked by. They were selling bags of weed. I walked right by them. They paid me no mind. Once I got past them, I pulled the gun out and the spray paint. I started writing my name on the wall. I wrote Little Loco, LKN in big bold letters. Finally, one of the Cobras noticed what I was doing and alerted the others. Cobra was the first thing they said. King Love Almighty was my response as I pointed the gun toward them and began shooting. There were screams. Whether they were from pain or fear, I don't know. I didn't stick around to find out. I did hear retaliatory shots as I ran toward Western. I went by the Lords' clubhouse only to find out it no longer existed. The Lords were now hanging out by Claremont Street and North. The Cobras had made them move. I went to Western and North and hopped on the bus to Cadezi and Armitage. I went straight to Locas and fell asleep. Nobody came by to scold me about doing things on my own this time. Meetings became few and far between that winter. The clubhouse no longer existed. King brothers were getting locked up left and right. The Latin Kings began losing their organization and respect. Other gangs became stronger and bolder in their action against the Kings. It became common to go out and find out that a rival gang had vandalized the walls in our hood with their insignias. Officer James was no longer on the payroll and became a cop to be feared. He loved busting kings. It was only because of the activities of brothers like myself with nothing better to do that the Latin Kings of Cadezi and Armitage remained a section to be reckoned with. In summer, the wars escalated, and so did my involvement with the Kings. Again, I was asked to be the leader of the Pee Wee Kings of Cadezi and Armitage. Again, I declined the position. I was then promoted to the juniors. I began making pretty good money selling weed, and I started experimenting with other crimes as well. Burglary became my money-making crime of choice. Daffy was my partner in crime. He was very good at it. Daffy could climb like Spider-Man and break doors open by pushing them with his legs. Every burglary we attempted was successful. Cubana's closet was full of electronics and jewelry. I gave a lot of the stolen merchandise away as gifts to girls I wanted, but mostly I sold the stuff. I spent whatever money I made as quickly as I got it getting high. My life was just one big party. Promiscuous sex, heavy drugs, and alcohol. Dodging bullets, what more could a 16-year-old boy ask for? The more criminally active I was, the more popular I became with my peers. The local news stations began reporting on the savagery of the Latino youth. Gang colors, hand signs, and graffiti were all covered on television. Most of the information reported was inconsistent or fabricated. Gangbangers avoided reporters or their cameras like the plague. Reporters didn't care. They would talk to any kid with colored shoelaces who was willing to be on television. The result was that kids ignorant of the ways of the gangs told stories that they had heard as if they had first-hand experience. These kids ended up as targets for gang members at school as well as in their own neighborhoods. Without realizing it, news media had endangered the lives of these kids. The media had a direct impact on kids deciding to join gangs. Actual gang members knew better than to display themselves for the world to see. The few who made that mistake were dealt with violently by their own gangs. The innocent kids who didn't know enough not to talk to the reporters became the victims of gang media hype. Kids who otherwise shied away from gang activity were now looking to join a gang for protection. An imperial gangster suspected of being the triggerman in Morena's murder was killed. His funeral was held at Caribe Funeral Home on Armitage near Central Park. This was a gangster hood. The Kings were determined not to let him rest in peace. A meeting was called involving all the Latin King sections on the north side, and plans were made to disrupt the funeral. All of us were told to make sure to be present on Cadezi and Armitage the day after the meeting. That was the day the wake was being held for the dead gangster. Nobody knew what was supposed to be happening. We were only told to show up. That night, I dreamt I was walking with Morena up Cadezi when she got shot. She fell on top of me and said, "It's your fault." I woke up screaming, "No, no, no." Cubana held me, but I pushed her away violently. My body was shaking, my head hurt, and my vision was blurry. I saw Morena enter through the bedroom door. I jumped off the bed and hugged her legs. I'm sorry, please forgive me," I cried. I felt a hand run through my hair, and a woman's voice said, it's okay, come on, get up." It was Loca. She had come to see why I was screaming. Both Cubana and Loca looked at me with compassion. "You better lay off those drugs," Loca said. "They're fucking you up." I dreamt about Morena, I told them. We all stood quietly for a moment. Then Loca left the room. I laid back down and fell asleep. I got up early the next morning and went to Cadezi and Armitage. I started getting high while I waited for all the brothers to show up. By noon, hundreds of Latin Kings had showed up and were headed toward Caribe Funeral Home. We went by bike and on foot. The idea was to arrive all at the same time from every direction. They could be seen running every which way as we approached the funeral home. We blocked off the road to both people and cars. Many King brothers had guns pulled out. They were watching the rooftops and guarding gangways against gangsters. Several King brothers went inside the funeral home and carried the dead body out with them. The mother of the dead gangster was screaming and begging for mercy. Her cries went unheard. The body was thrown in the middle of the street and repeatedly shot. Then everybody scattered. Nobody was arrested. It was time to celebrate our victory in avenging Morena's death so memorably. We wanted to send out a message that the Kings should not be messed with, but this didn't happen. Action against the Kings not only continued, it escalated. As for me, I had another scene added to my nightmares. Night after night, I saw myself being thrown on the street. I heard my mother screaming, and I woke up just before I was shot.